Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the Good News Podcast today. We have a guest who is a very, very special individual. This is someone who has worked in the Brampton community for many, many years. Margaret Wallis-Duffy, Wallis for Wellness, serving, blessing, helping people for many years. Margaret has also been so involved in the community. I just love that about her. This is someone who is engaging. She's dynamic. She's inspiring. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. Friends, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on the Good News Podcast today. We have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Margaret Wallis-Duffy. As I said in the intro, Margaret has been involved in this community for many years in lots and lots of different ways. I'm looking forward to sitting down and hearing a bit more about it and diving into what this is all about and how God has impacted her life through this. But Margaret, let's just start. It really is amazing to me, the many ways that you are involved in the community, have been for a long time. Where does all that come from for you? How did that even begin to be, not just what you do, I would say, but really who you are from what I see?
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. It's I'm so honored and excited to be here and just to sit down with you to talk about things that we care about, which is community. Yeah. And where does it come from? I think, candidly, my family.
Yeah.
My parents, and I believe as a parent, we do lead by example, and sometimes in very obvious ways and often in very subtle, consistent ways. And I'm blessed with parents that, rest my father's soul, but both my mom and dad have always believed in taking care of others. They've always believed in giving back. I know my father would say to me, even as a young girl, if you have to think twice about helping someone, then you need to really reflect on whether your intentions are where they should be.
Wow.
And therefore, they didn't just say that, they lived it. So as a young girl, my mom's one of 13 siblings, and we've got a crazy, big, wonderful, crazy family.
Yeah.
Notice I said crazy a couple times, because they are.
It's that crazy.
It is, and it's a good thing. But when you have that many lives around you all the time, difficulty happens. Challenges occur. And I watched my parents time and time again open their home. At one point we kind of joked that it was like a hotel, because my parents simply opened their doors for siblings to come and stay when they were in a time of need, without questions asked, without judgment. They just did. I know my mom said, I feel really bad. You're coming back from university and someone's in your bedroom. And we still laugh about it. It was an aunt or uncle, and it didn't matter.
Sure.
It was the more the merrier. And so by watching them, I think just an extension of who they are and what they do, I saw the value in it. And that's why, and thank you for noticing that. It's not what I do, but really it is, I would like to hope who I am.
Yeah, for sure. No, and as you think back to growing up, because I think it's good to hang on to that for a little bit, because sometimes we just get so busy in life. I know I do, that I miss the impact that my family, my parents, have had on who I am today. And I'm just even naming that. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for, you see, probably for most of us, there's pieces that we want to lose from our family. I say to our kids all the time, I said, hey, I hope that you're, and I know you are, wise enough to discern what are the pieces of this house that you want to continue. What are the pieces that you want to maybe change and do differently? Because we're not perfect. None of us are perfect.
Absolutely.
But so much so, and so as you think about your parents, specifically, what are some of the things that you'd say you do today because of what they did and who they were, and how that just continues that legacy that is actually a living legacy. Legacy to me isn't just something that happens when we die. It's something that we live into now because of the people who have gone before us.
Yes.
But for you, I just love how it kind of takes you right back to how you grew up and who your parents were and your home how maybe more specifically has that influenced who you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm an only child, so it's so funny, right? My mom's one of 13, and then there was me. But I never felt like a lonely, only child. I always felt like there was this big safety net. And to this day, I still feel like there's a safety net. And my dad has passed on, yet I still feel his presence and his guidance. And my mom, who, through her examples, I catch myself. My mom quietly, to this day, I know, and she doesn't say this, but she'll reach out to cousin or her nieces and nephews that are now grown with their own families. Maybe it's through a text message or a direct message on Facebook, because she's pretty good online. she just constantly nurtures relationships. And when I look at what I love the most in relationships is connection. Without a question, that comes from my parents. My dad embodied that. My mom still does in big ways and in little ways and without a big deal. She just lives that way. And so I think that's one of the things that I do. I do try to, in my business and in my life, try to find ways to connect and nurture relationships just because you can, not because you should, or it's dutiful to do so, or you feel like someone needs it. Sometimes even when they don't, it's just that nurturing piece. And what else? I think the fun in it. My dad had an amazing sense of humor.
Nice.
My dad was an amazing public speaker, which I've been blessed with having the gift of gab that he gave me without question. But not taking yourself so seriously and recognizing that to have a fulfilling life and to help others have that, you got to take risks and you have to have some fun doing it. And you have to fail forward a lot. And so I think that's another thing. My mom was more the prop me up, hold me together, keep me honest and real. My dad was like the lean in, do the thing, take risks, do it bold and big. And there was that beautiful balance. And I don't take that for granted because I see that even in some of the ways I parent. Like you said, I'm sure there's some things my kids are going to go, oh yeah, we're not carrying that on.
We all have those, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I also see it reflected in Blake and Carly too, which really warms my heart because I see them taking the initiative to be that friend or community member or coworker that's lending an ear just because they can, or that's lending a hand because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes through the generations, which is so cool. You mentioned the word connection, and I think it's a really important word. In fact, in the midst of this pandemic that we're in, I think we've realized that whether it's online, whether it's in person, what people really need as human beings is connection. As running a business for many years, Wellness for Wallace.
Wallace for Wellness.
Wallace for Wellness.
Yeah,
my
it's a bit
apologies.
tricky.
Wallace for Wellness. Being a massage therapist, how does that, how did your calling to do that? I'd call it a calling,
it is.
How did that resonate with this desire for you to want to connect with people?
It's such a great question, and I've done a lot of reflecting on that lately because there's some changes in my career that are coming, and I've done a lot. 30 years is a long time to do something, but I was drawn to this profession. And, the 25-year-old me and why I was drawn, and now the 50, soon 55-year-old me is very different, very different. However, the commonality and what this pandemic has taught me is exactly the word you just used. Why am I so passionate about what I do? It's because of human connection in a very powerful, meaningful, respectful, and intentional way. The laying on of hands. And you have to remember, 30 years ago, Jamie, my own family thought I was like, my dad, very proud man. I was taking an undergrad in kinesiology, and I was going to be a what? A massage what?
I hadn't really thought about that.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
I was out there, and because they trusted in me. But I'm a bit of a visionary, and I like to push the envelope and do things innovatively. And massage therapy isn't what it is today 30 years ago. But I had a vision. What I didn't realize at the time when I was 25, that my vision was to be the conduit for people to connect to themselves, to connect to others, and to connect to community. 30 years later, that is what has fueled me, and arguably why I'm even more passionate now than I was, because I've seen what the power of touch can do to heal people, to heal communities, to heal our world. And in midst of a global pandemic, we've seen what disconnection can do. It is harmful, it is divisive, and it can truly cause dis-ease. And my mission has been to help people get into the driver's seat of their health so that together we can be better and to help one another through difficult times. And the lack of connection is not the way to do that. And so what the COVID has done and this pandemic has done, which has been a gift, in my opinion, it's waking people up to wellness, waking people up to the need, the critical need for connection, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that they're now saying, well, hang on, we can't live without it. Just like a baby failure to thrive. You know, when I worked in sick kids, I'm internationally certified with infants and working on little babies that are 1,000 grams on the palm of my hands. They don't gain weight and they don't thrive if there's not physical touch and connection. It's no different in humans and adults like you and I. We've witnessed how deteriorating that is, that isolation and that lack of connection through a global pandemic. And so we have to start with connection with ourselves, then with community, and then we can, in my opinion, elevate the world, which is why I feel so blessed to be where I am in my career and seeing the power of touch and what it's done on some real visceral, unbelievable levels. Like I will eventually write a book because the stories I can share from my massage table, this is not fluff and stuff. Oh, it's nice to go have a massage. Yeah, that's true.
Sure. Yeah.
But the mind and body are connected. You can't separate the two. Your body is a house for your emotions. And over time, it manifests disease if we don't pay attention. And that's, I think, what the pandemic has shown all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned the word dis-ease. And just love to hear more about that, because what struck me was you're referring to that in more than one way, I think.
100%.
Like there's physical disease, but then we can have emotional, mental, spiritual dis-ease.
Absolutely.
A lack of contentment or health or overall. Yeah, tell us a bit more about that word and what you mean when you talk about that.
That was intentional, and that pregnant pause was very intentional because it does exactly that. It stops people in their tracks and make them actually reflect and say, oh, what does she mean by that?
Exactly.
Because you can't separate the mind from the body, from the soul. I mean, we've tried to do that, and I'm not here to disparage and put down our conventional medical community. I've got friends that are doctors and surgeons, and but I do believe in a better together as one mentality. And you and I, as the patient, are part of that, very integral part of that equation. We need to have preventative and conventional medicine working better together with you and I at the center of that. But that's not the way our society and our system and our culture lives. We wait till things are broken. We wait until there's dis-ease mentally. I mean, we've got an opiate crisis and a mental health crisis. Are we surprised by that? I'm certainly not. We can't just wait for a pill for an ill, wait till it's broken, try to patch it together. Well, actually we can, and we have. How's that working for us is what I want to challenge people to stop and really ask themselves. How is that working for us? Or is it better to get uncomfortable and sit in the dis-ease of thought and emotion and discontent, and then take a breath and try to figure out new ways of living, of doing, of existing. Because we don't have to just do what we've always done. Certainly, I mean, I'm sitting in this chair across from you because I've witnessed you and your congregation do some pretty incredible things over the course of this pandemic to make sure you connect. That takes courage. It takes risk. I'm sure a lot of hair pulling, right? And fear and this isn't working and whatever. But I would always argue that it's going to be worth it. And if you looked at that from a health perspective, a preventative perspective, and when I look at health, I'm not just looking at, do you have arthritis? I'm talking about preventative, integrative, holistic health. If we stop and listen and get comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes and challenge the norm, that's where the magic can happen. That's where change and innovation can come from, and where we can, I truly believe, together, we can change this world.
Yeah. I've got all these questions that really weren't part of what we were originally set up, because I want to get to the community involvement and stuff, because there's so much of that really I think people are going to be so inspired to hear. You've ran an amazing, beautiful business for years that have blessed many and been very involved in the community at the same time. And obviously when you hear about where you've come from and who you are, it's not a surprise, which is really cool. But as a massage therapist, and just as you're talking about all of this being integrated together, when you have someone on the table, what's going on in you? What's going on in your head, in your heart?
Wow, that's a really good question.
My sense is and I don't mean to say this lightly, it's not just the physical. The
Oh,
physical
gosh,
is
no.
important. Exactly. And I don't know that most of us would even think about that. They're just going to get a massage,
Yeah.
even if they are injured or in a place of disease.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's when you think about who you are, that's going to impact how you do what you do. So
Oh
yeah,
my
what's
gosh.
going on in your head? And I don't mean to get into details as far
No,
as
I love
people,
this
because
question.
we have to be anonymous, and I'm not looking for. But just
Yeah.
when you got someone on the table and you're giving them a massage, what's going on for you?
Wow. And that's probably part of the fabric of why I love what I do and why I
Yeah.
never get tired of it.
Yeah.
Because it is far more complex than just the laying on of hands on a trigger point in your subscapularis that's causing you to have pain down your arm.
Which is really amazing, I have to say too.
That's important.
We talk at parties. I can't believe that they knew exactly where to touch, and I felt that here. Like your body is
there's science,
the
right?
body is amazing.
It is amazing,
and,
and I'm
know
a
how to do that is
science
cool.
anatomy geek, so I love that, and that's why our clinic is 80% doctor referral. And yes, we treat illness and disease and prevent illness and disease. That's what I love about it. I'm a geek when it comes to anatomy, and I love that. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
So that's part of my answer is I'm always thinking about, because you're your own puzzle, Jamie. You're not like anybody else that's going to come into that room and be in a vulnerable position on my table. So each and every time, each person, doesn't matter their age, their sex, their orientation, it doesn't matter. They're a human breathing on my table. I don't know what they're bringing to that appointment. They're going to tell me through their case history what might be bothering them, where their dis-ease is showing up. But they might not even know what they're storing, why they're storing it, and how that's impacting their overall health. I've had many instances where the human body and the power of touch have taught me to never take for granted the body touch and how we need to honor that. I've seen emotional releases on CEOs of huge companies, of Olympic athletes on the pool deck at Olympic trials. I've seen little babies, and I've seen people have emotional releases. They were uncomfortable because they didn't know why it was happening to them. And I've also, one of the biggest compliments, and I'm going to answer your question, but all of this is to say that one of the biggest compliments I often get is that it's just different having a massage with you. Do I think I'm a good clinical therapist? Yeah, I do. Do I constantly take more courses, and am I really good at physiology, anatomy, and assessments? Yes. But I don't believe that's the power in what I do. What I do know is that if I show up and I'm present for that person in that hour on that table with no other agenda but other than to pay attention through what I feel, see, hear, touch, and sometimes in what I don't hear, but guiding them in a respectful, therapeutic manner, it never ceases to amaze me the power of our human body and our mind and our ability to help heal ourselves when someone stays in the moment with you. So when I prepare for myself, it is about being open, without judgment, ready to be that investigative reporter, because it is like a puzzle. Sometimes it is. But also be willing to listen to the body language when sometimes things start to bubble up and somebody will say, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't know why this is happening. Full on emotional releases. And let me tell you, I literally doodled in the back of the class in Therapeutic Relations 101 when they were talking about emotional releases. I'm the first person to admit I thought this was hocus pocus, hogwash, craziness, hug a tree, howl at the moon kind of stuff. Because I thought if you've got a back spasm, I'm going to treat your back spasm. And you're going to leave, you're going to think this is great, and you'll come back next week. Oh boy, did the body and the universe have a different lesson for me, even before I wrote my government exams. And when someone had a full-on, a very powerful story, which one day maybe I'll share it with everybody that's watching, because it's powerful. Someone had a complete, utter emotional release on my table. And all I could think of, because it literally was the week before that I was supposed to be learning about this, and I didn't know how to handle this because I didn't listen. I thought it was crazy. And I stayed with her and asked her, would you like me to stop? And she said, no, but I don't know why this is happening. And literally her legs were tremoring and she was crying and she was having a whole body reaction. And all of a sudden she blurted out a very traumatic experience that caused her to be in the place where she was getting support. And her life changed in that instant because she was now seen as the victim, not the villain. It changed her world. Her family came back into her life. She got the support that she needs. And do you know, Jamie, to this day, 30 years later, she still calls me occasionally to thank me for the impact I made on her. And we go through this every time. I mean, it's 30 years later, so she's a grown woman now. And I said, no, thank you for teaching me the power of touch and that I need not ever take for granted what is in these hands and in our hearts. Because when you ask me, how do I prepare? With an open heart, an open mind, without judgment, I apply my clinical skills, and then I really listen to people. They're not just, and I think sometimes in healthcare, in our sick care system, we're dealing with a diabetic patient or a suicidal person. No, you're dealing with a Jamie and a Margaret and a Susan who has got all kinds of life experiences and are carrying many things, some that the world don't even know they're carrying. And their body is housing that. And through the power of touch and an environment that's safe, incredible things happen. And I've witnessed that time and time again. So I hope I show up with an open heart and open mind and a willingness to be taught new things every time I open the room.
That's awesome. You know, it just shows what that desire to connect with people can do. That what a great story. And I love that she calls you after all these years. That must be a great reminder for you too, why what you do matters and why it's so important. And then this idea of wanting to connect, and that's maybe that's a great way to actually segue into your community involvement. And because you could have just ran a really, really beautiful business that blesses many people. And that's in itself an amazing thing to do. But in addition to that, maybe this is kind of going back to your dad a little bit, to take a risk, get out there. Don't be afraid to reach out. You've also, in addition to running a very successful business that's blessed many, been very involved in the community in all kinds of different ways. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's been for you.
So because my career is making a bit of a transition of late, I'm cleaning out a lot of things at the clinic. And when you clean out 30 years of experiences and memories, it stops me in my tracks because we've done some really cool, innovative, sometimes crazy things, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Initially, I just knew through the examples that have been given to me in my life that it made sense to me. If I was going to have someone trust their health in my hands, I needed to get out there and physically earn their trust. How do you do that? Well, you do that by getting out there with people, with the doctors that are going to refer to you. Baking a banana loaf and a referral pad and a marketing letter that says, you can't be doctors so-and-so. You can't entrust the care of your patients in my hands unless you know what I'm doing. So why don't you come for a complimentary treatment in our clinic? Here's a banana bread, because you got to get that letter to the doctor. So you got to get that through the gatekeepers at the front, the nurses and the receptionists. Here's a banana loaf I baked, and here's a marketing letter, and I want you to come because I want to earn your trust. And so that's sort of where it started, where you started to inject yourself into a community so people knew who you were, knew your name, knew what you stood for, knew what mission you were on. Because remember, 30 years ago, massage therapy, I mean, I wasn't on a Renda Road at midnight, Jamie, as a masseuse. I didn't have hands in my logo. I'm a massage therapist. But I had to earn the respect that we now have, which is 80 to 90% doctor referral. So it started with really a business acumen thing to try to, okay, how do I connect with people? How do I earn their respect? And then I got sort of bit by the community bug where you realize that, you do this. That was a lot of fun. It yielded results, which was great in terms of building my clinic. But there's something that I've learned really early on, and I share this when I coach other business owners. And I often get a look like, and that is this. There are two types of currency. The currency that we need to have to be able to put a roof over our head and pay for our children to go to school and food in their mouth. Like we have to pay our bills. So there's that. But the currency that you get that's not as tangible, you can't necessarily touch it, but you can definitely feel it, is the currency of community. and connection and charity and giving back. And that currency, I would argue now, fuels me even more because the money will come.
Yeah.
But if you're not giving back and contributing in community, if you're not being part of something, then you're missing half the equation. And that currency of community has fueled my heart and my business more than any amount of good old dollars could. Period. The impact is greater.
Yeah.
And then that just fueled me to try new things. I'm very innovative. So I've done a lot of, and maybe we want to talk about that, I've done a lot of really cool different things to raise money and awareness for what I believe in, which is preventative and integrative health, while also linking it to charity and community so we could give back. Because I don't believe that we can sustain something without having that currency of community.
Yeah. There's a theme in the Bible that's talked about being blessed to be a blessing. And it's kind of it just continues to go. The more you bless others, the more you're blessed.
Right.
The more you receive, the more you can give. And it just keeps going. So, and it's really amazing. I totally agree with you. It's not about, we need to make a living. We need, but life can be, I know, you can all imagine people who have everything in the world and more and aren't happy and content. And then there's people who have nothing. And because of the way that they live and who they are, they're so content. They're so happy. And I think that's kind of what your name, which is really gospel oriented. It's really, really, really cool. Want to talk a bit more about that. But first, what are some of the things like that you've been doing or have done over the years to be involved in the community? What are some of the favorite things that, as you look back and or even have on the go now? I know you're never done. I know you.
No. And you've been on so many of these committees with me. So, a big one, the William Osler Hospital Foundation. I was on the board many years ago. So many gala committees and the Healthy Communities Initiative. I was on the steering committee of that. We've had charity events every year. COVID stopped that for a bit, but we always find ways to raise money. But one of the things we did, Warm Hands, Warming Hearts, where we used to put up sheets in our clinic. So we'd have more treatment rooms. So we'd have 9 treatment rooms and we have live music and we'd all work for free and people would pay a reduced rate to come and have their massage therapy for the day. And we'd have music and hors d'oeuvres in the waiting room. And then 100% of those proceeds would go to the hospital. My dad, I can't say, somebody special played Santa. And we would go to the hospital. This was before SARS. And we would give a Christmas party to the kids inpatients at the pediatrics ward. I convinced 19 other people to jump out of an airplane with me. I launched our new website 12 years ago when I launched myself out of an airplane, Shania Twain's old airplane, up in Innisfil. And when I landed at the bottom, we launched the website and I convinced 20 other people to do it. And we raised a total of $20,000. 10,000 of it went to Bethel Hospice and 10,000 of it went to spinal muscular atrophy in honor of my cousin Jack, who has spinal muscular atrophy. And of course, sadly, those children often need hospice. So I'm a better together thinker who brings 2 charities together and says, well, if we do this together, I think we can have even greater power. We're going to make connections. We're still going to raise money and we're going to have a lot of fun. So I jumped out of an airplane. I've done Divas Do It, Why Don't You on the worst snowstorm in the 2000 and whatever. We had women showing up in ball gowns, some in their pajamas. We had boas, and it was at the Rotary Glen, and we raised $10,000 for Wellspring Jacuzzi. And I'm really proud. We've done so many things over the years, and their latest and greatest, which I think is so exciting, and we've given to Caring and Sharing here at North Bramalea, and that is our collaboration, our extension arm with Global Coin Solutions. What a cool, innovative idea that helps people be able to give even when perhaps they don't have stuff to give themselves. And what do I mean by that? A guy I went to high school with here in Brampton, how cool is that? Started a company called Global Coin Solutions, and he has 2 missions: to put people to work and to give back to charity. I'm
Beautiful.
into that.
Yeah, who doesn't like that?
But what's so cool about it, how many times have you gone on a trip and you've got coins that you've got now in your bedside table, and you might show your kids, oh, this was from Spain or this one. You don't typically take those coins with you when you go back on a trip. You may take some of the dollars, but often there are side tables full of coins that are sitting there. Do you know there are, I think, $2 to $3 billion in Canada sitting in the side tables? This is true stats. Wow. Side tables of Canadians. Well, this friend of mine is converting that to worthwhile charities to make money during a time that's really hard to raise money.
Yeah.
We simply have Better Together as One. We have a globe where people can come and put in, or maybe they have pennies still in their drawer. People that have passed away, we hear this all the time. They've got all their travels from their mother. She traveled all over the world and they've got all these coins and it's going to go into our landfill. Or it can go into the Better Together as One globe. Where we think globally but act locally and convert that into cash for local worthwhile charities. In the midst of a global pandemic, when things were locked down and closed, I'm proud to say we've already raised over $2,500 for charities. Caring and Sharing is just one of those. And in 30 years, Wallis for Wellness has raised over $100,000 for charities. And I want that to continue to climb and be the legacy that I leave behind.
Oh, love it. Thanks, Margaret. That's so cool. That is so cool.
It's
amazing,
fun.
eh?
Isn't that cool?
And so much fun along the way. Like I love just clearly the energy that you give off as you share these things. Like it's contagious and how much fun and joy you're having as you do and lead these things.
It's funny when you say contagious. In my waiting room at the clinic, do you remember the guy, we did this together, Hollywood. He was Kids with Heart when my son did a charity with Pinball Clements years ago. And we had a carnival in downtown Brampton to raise money for the Michael Pinball Clements Foundation. My son, when he was 12, did this. And there was this graphic artist that his name was Hollywood. He painted this, one of my favorite sayings, attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? It's a question. Well, now that we think contagions are not such a good thing, I think, do I take that off the wall? Like, do you want us to be contagious?
Come back.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got it tucked away. But I often will say that to my kids. Attitudes are contagious. Have you ever poked your husband or wife all day long, and then when they finally fight back and you go, what's wrong with them? Like, your attitude is contagious, good or bad. And I like to think of that when it comes to community. Are you contagious in a positive way? Because as you mentioned, it really fuels people. People buy into that kind of passion. They want to be part of it. And that's the type of contagion that I want to see moving forward from this pandemic.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
We talk about being blessed to be a blessing, how we're blessed in that process.
Yeah.
How have you been blessed? How has God blessed you through the years? And even now, I know this next chapter will continue this theme of how can I give back? How can I serve others and be a blessing to others and bring all of that to the community and make those connections? And, there's lots of different ways to do that, but it's all about making connections with people and loving people. How is God blessing you as you commit so much of your life to that?
There's so many ways. There's so many ways, and I think it starts with, and not everybody knows this, I share it candidly on my website. None of us look like our story. I don't look like 10 surgeries, 4 bowel obstructions, a lung collapse, a fecal transplant. I almost died from a hospital-borne infection. My son at 12 was my poop donor, like on Grey's Anatomy. And I went through menopause at 39. I'm now 54. Wow. I could look at that and say, boy, that wasn't a lot of fun, because it wasn't. It was not good times. Like I was in hospital more than I was out during high school, during university. I had the doctor at our house in our first year of marriage, and in hospital, I think we counted 40 times. It was a gift. I own an integrative preventative health clinic. I've walked through some really challenging times, and there'll be more losses and health things. And I share that candidly because I believe a lot of things happened to me because I have the tenaciousness, the passion, the platform that I've created to be able to share it candidly and honestly and authentically, because it's not all pretty. And I'm not proud of some of the decisions I made when I wasn't well. But there wasn't other options given to me, which is why I challenge our healthcare system and advocate for change, because when you're only offered this, yet there's that you could do as well, but they only offer you this. How do you expect people to learn and grow and be healthy? Because we don't honor preventative healthcare. So I've been blessed in so many ways because I've walked through storms. I've got to the other side. I've figured out how to manage that. And then I feel that it's a gift that I get to share it. And not only that I get to, it's almost like I have to. And that's why this next chapter of my career, I'm not taking my hands off, but I'm transitioning the way that Wallis for Wellness works, because you know what it takes to run an organization. There's a lot that goes on outside of just a treatment room, which I love, and I don't want to give that connection up. I'm really good at it, and I love that, and it fuels me. But all the other stuff around it, I don't dislike it, but it's just time to do that. Whereas I think now my calling and what I need to be doing is sharing my experience clinically and through media and through community, how to help others help themselves, how to help community come together. And so I think there's been a lot of those blessings through my whole career and steering me to try new things. Am I nervous? You bet I am. That's when I know it's right. When I know that I'm pushing myself enough out of my comfort zone, because we don't grow when we don't have dis-ease. And that's not to say that you can't ever be content and happy. I'm not saying to always be topsy-turvy and feeling uncomfortable. But in the quiet moments of reflection, if you're not wondering what's next, and I hope, just like my father, I do that till the last breath, because that's what my father did at 88. He went out the way he wanted to go out, with who he wanted to go out around, in his manner. And I respect that so much. So I think there's been so many blessings that I continue to lean in and trust. Sure, will I fail? Sure. And from those failures, I'll figure it out and try to get better at it. But I really do feel this pull that it's time to do something different. And I think in that is a blessing.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure if I was betting money, I'd bet you'd be doing this till your last days. I got no question. I love it. One of the things that can happen when we're so passionate and excited about so many things, an entrepreneurial in spirit, which for sure is who you are, is burnout, exhaustion. Sometimes, in the pandemic, I think for all of us has brought a complexity that is real around that even more so. Talk to us a little bit about that reality too. That because I think it's important for people to know that even those who appear to be fully on all the time aren't necessarily.
Oh my gosh!
Right,
no.
and so just what have you learned about that over the years, and even now? Like, let's face it, we're still learning through this pandemic, especially about tiredness, exhaustion, how to take care of yourself, so that you can do all of these things that God's calling you to do.
It's a badge that we shouldn't wear proudly, and that is, just because we can do doesn't mean we always should. And that's really hard. You're absolutely right. For someone like me, I am a doer, and many people are. But because it's my life's work. It's not like, sometimes I think, really, this is work, like, because I love it.
Yeah.
But I will say this: there have been some dark days in this pandemic myself, and I've been vulnerable enough. And if anybody follows me, and if you don't, please do, on Instagram or Facebook. And it's not to grandstand, but it is to be authentic, real, and relatable. How can I, as a leader in helping people become the CEO of their health, how can I put on a face on a reel that looks like everything is so perfect all of the time and dress it up? How do people relate to that? Well, they don't. In fact, it's making our youth sick because they can't, the comparison game, and, well, they're not like that person or that. Well, you're seeing a highlight reel. So I've been at times, and you can go back in my social media after you watch this, and you'll find it, where I've turned the camera on when I'm not good. And not to be woe is me, but to be authentic and unapologetically myself. Because if I can touch one person, if it can land on one person's ear that's also feeling defeated, exhausted, burnt out, overwhelmed, anxious, whatever it is, then I'm doing my job. And I'm showing them through that vulnerability, through that sense of community. Because I think what we forget, and I know you'll relate to this, when we're in community, let's be candid, Jamie, we get a lot back from community. And sometimes people don't see that. Like, a lot of what I get from being part of that, sometimes I think, like, is this okay? Like, I feel like I'm taking a lot here. And people don't realize that, because it's such an important part of the human experience. We need to have that two-way connection. So when I turn the camera on and I'm being really honest about, I'm feeling really down, and I'm really this is hard. And the clinic, we were only closed for the first 3 months because we were deemed essential, which I worked really hard to lobby to do that. But it was scary, and you got overhead, and you knew people were hurting and you weren't helping them. And it was hard. But by being real and authentic and honest, other people can relate. I can show you thousands of DMs and direct messages or emails or phone calls where somebody is saying, thank you. I didn't feel alone. When Carly and I did a COVID kitchen dance party only to help ourselves, and it went crazy, and we had other people doing COVID kitchen dance parties just to lift our spirits in those dark days. I think that's really, really important. So do I burn out? Yes. Do I sometimes not practice what I preach? Yeah. Do I have a wonderful surrounding of colleagues and family that remind me? I'm going to be candid. I just had a concussion. And my own doctor had to say to me, what would you tell someone else? Like, hello, right? How human of us.
Yeah.
So I don't have it all figured out. Do I have years of schooling and experience? Yes, but so what? What people connect most with, in my opinion, from my years of experience one-on-one with people, or when I speak on national television, is connecting on some level where someone can say, oh, I relate to that. And they may have a totally different way of getting to where they are, and they may have a totally different way to get out. And that's where I get excited, because I can show you ways to help nurture yourself so you can climb out of those deep, dark holes in your self-care and your daily routines. But who would I be? I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't admit there's been some dark days. And my family will say, like, she's not always like that. Well, no.
No, exactly. Yeah.
No.
And I think, when people stop to think about it, no one would be surprised that we're all human.
Yes.
What do you do when you're in a moment like that, a space like that, a day like that? When you are feeling like, okay, as much as I love what I do, as much as passion and energy God has given me for it, I've hit the. What do you do?
What did you just do? You went,
yeah.
So it sounds crazy, and I teach this a lot. I go back to my breath and I stop what I'm doing and I breathe first. Right then and there. And sometimes it's in my car and I pull over to the side of the road, and sometimes it's a valve released and I have a good cry. I start to lean in on the tools that I help give others, because those tools are really important. So breathing. And meditation, and not scary like people think meditation. I don't know how to do that. Like literally just reflective time to just be. We're not human doings. We're human beings. And sometimes we just have to stop and just be. I lean in on my tools of hydration, movement. Movement is medicine for me. When I haven't been exercising, I know my mental health isn't as good. And that doesn't mean I have to go to the gym for an hour. No, it means sometimes just getting out in nature for a 20-minute walk. It might just mean that I go on the back deck with my dog and throw the ball and breathe in the air. And connection, phoning a friend and somebody that you can trust and be honest with and say, I'm struggling, and share the burden with. Nutrition, like all those things. And this is what I teach, whether it's in corporations or in the clinic. These little things add up, and we take a lot of them for granted. And we just think, oh, well, if you don't pay a lot of money for it, if you don't have this all scheduled in, sometimes it literally is scheduling in my gratitude journal. Like I do that religiously. My drinking my water, am I getting enough water? Listening to some music. I have a song that I love called Change is Coming. And it's a Canadian artist, Natalie Hughes. And sometimes you'll see me blasting that in the car. Nice. Because the lyrics resonate. I lean into my own tools and lean into my own safety net. And that's where connection is so critical. And I'm blessed to have family and friends and community that truly care, because we often reap what we sow.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks for sharing so openly today. And I just love the simplicity of those things that you named, that when we're in a dark place, a bad place, a hard place, there's lots of, but sometimes just those simple little day-to-day things can really make a difference.
They add up.
And I love that you live out, what you speak of, you practice what you preach, if you will. And man, what a blessing to have you on today. Just want to finish with a little rapid fire here. Okay. What's the best thing happening in your family, in your home these days?
best thing happening in our family. You know what? It's kind of a funny thing because our daughter's home, even though she should be at university, but she made a tough decision given all the circumstances and the changes. And this is what I love because we've created a safety net. So there you go. There's my parents coming back again. Carly decided she was coming back home, even though she loved living at university. There was so much up and down. And she was, I don't want to say she was struggling, but she was aware that she wasn't as content as she wanted to be. So she's home, which is kind of neat.
Awesome.
So last night, what happened last night? I said, here's a perfect example. I said, I need a hug. It was 10 o'clock at night. So my 20-year-old came over and gave me a hug.
Awesome.
That is what's happening.
That's so cool. That's cool. Best thing happening in your neighborhood, your community?
I think watching the togetherness, this better together as one mentality that people, I've always bought into and believed in and tried to be the visionary behind. People are craving that. They're craving connection. And so we're seeing that in little and big ways where how can we help just our neighbor? Yeah. How can we listen to the differences of people? There's so much discourse, but I think the differences are, and you're doing such a great job, I have to say, I just think it's awesome that you're having these hard conversations that aren't fun to have, but are necessary. And I want you to know this, just even yesterday on a table during treatment, because it's somebody from your congregation, we talked about one of the series you're doing right now for Black History Month. Wow. And I think it's awesome because there's the rippling effect of community, right? So somebody's on my table, but they're telling me, and we're having a conversation because she happens to be a white woman with a black son. And so that sparked conversation. So those things in the community are happening because of this better together mentality, which we're all, I think, leaning into, which is cool.
So cool. Thank you. Last one. What's the best thing happening in our world today?
People are going to think this is insane because it's been one of the biggest challenges, but I think it was the reset maybe we all needed, maybe packaged in the way we didn't want it. But this pandemic, and I think because apart from, I don't like the way some people are choosing to be divisive and the way they're handling it. But what I am seeing and what brings me hope is that this has stopped a lot of people in their tracks. And for 30 years, I've been trying to wake people up to their wellness and to recognize what matters in life. And when that has been stripped away with COVID, when you couldn't do the things that you thought that you've always done, you couldn't get the things you thought were important, the things. The gaping holes that were missed was connection of people and community and your own health. And so COVID has actually been a gift. And I'm ready, and maybe that's why my career is changing the way it is right now. I feel a pull to use this momentum to say, okay, you guys have woken up now. And you're saying, oh, wait a minute, the system may not be here to help me if I don't take care of my own health. No, you can't just walk to the doctor and say, fix me, doc. You need to take some ownership of your own health. And we need to do that with one another. So I think that's the good that's happening in the world right now. And my hope is that with collectively, in our own ways, we're all going to do things to move forward and really focus on what matters, our health, our families, and community, because all this stuff doesn't matter in the world, and we know that if we can't be together.
So well put. So well put.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I just want to close with a prayer and give thanks for all that has been shared here today, and just for your life and leadership and continued connection with the community. So let's pray to close. Loving and gracious God, thank you so much for this conversation and for really some significant words that are more than words, things like connection and community and collaboration. And there are ways that you bless everyone involved when those things happen. So thank you for Margaret, for the calling on her life, for the way that you have enabled her to be who she is today because of her family, because of your blessing in her life. And she is so blessed, clearly, to live in the ways that she is. And so continue to sustain her, give her resiliency, keep her healthy. And thanks again for this inspiring story that encourages us all to be a part of what you're doing in this world today. We just entrust it to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks again, Margaret.
you.
So much. And thanks, everybody, for joining us on the Good News Podcast today. So good to be with you. So good to have you part of this conversation. God bless you, and see you again soon. Man, that conversation, just like many of our Good News Podcast episodes, went to some places that I just didn't see coming. That word connection, when Margaret was talking about that, why she became a massage therapist, who she is, that word connection just was so loud to me in my spirit, if you know what I mean. And isn't that powerful, eh? That whatever we do, we can connect with people. We're living in a time, friends, aren't we, where people need connection more than ever before. I love that term, that currency of community, and that sense of what really makes us rich, what really blesses our lives. Isn't it true? Margaret certainly lives this out, but I hope you experience this as well, that when we are blessed to be a blessing to others, we get even more blessed in the process of living into that. So that is the gospel. That's the good news. And what a great episode it's been. Thanks so much for joining us, friends. God bless you. If you've liked this episode, if you've enjoyed it, please share it with others so that they can be a part of this Good News family. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtom. God bless you, friends. Great to be with you.